Let me ask you guys a question, if you could see me very well. But let me ask you a question. How many of you, or basically how long does it take any of you to read a comic book? Let me ask you this. How long does it take any of you to read a comic book? For some of you it might take 15 minutes. Others it may take 20 minutes. Okay? But on average, I'm pretty sure that it takes most people 20 to 30 minutes, if you will, to read a comic book. The reason I say 20 to 30 minutes is real simple, folks. You see, the reason it would take somebody, and even someone like me, that long to do it, is because not only do you want to read what the characters are saying, and you want to probably read the dialogue and the narration, but you also want to take in everything in the book. You want to take in all that is happening. That's why on average, I'm pretty sure it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to read a book. Now, I want you to keep that in mind for a second. Keep that in mind for a second, because if it takes you 20 to 30 minutes to read a book, keep that in mind. You see, as we all know, this summer, Archie Comics and Ian Flynn have recently released, or going to be releasing, the 4-part story arc, Sonic Genesis. Now, the prelude to the event, as it's being called, and basically it's being called an event, it's being called one of the most talked about stories in the history of the book. The prelude was just recently in 225. And now the implage is supposed to take place in 230. Now what does that mean? Well, that means obviously from May to October we've got this whole thing to deal with. But a lot of people, even before Genesis was officially, before Genesis and 225 were officially released, more importantly 225, a lot of people, from what they read, from the description, from the hints and the clues that everybody that was working on this project or had insider info were giving, a lot of people speculated and in a way were right about what they were watching or what they were hearing. You see, what they were hearing was that from the first description of part 1, it says an all new beginning. So basically the first thing that goes through people's mind when they read that, it's a throw-off. But the more details and the more information that came in throughout the months, a lot of people got an indication, some, as a matter of fact, had an indication that what they're going to be reading this summer is Archie Comics and Ian Flynn's own take on a similar story that we have seen from DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Image Comics, from stories that we have seen on television, seen in movies, whether the television movies, direct to video or theatrical. Basically what we're getting, folks, is another one of the stories to where the main villain finds a way to warp reality in his image. Basically the thing is, Eggman, Robotnik, if you want to call him that, wants to basically work it out to where he's the prime Robotnik. He's the one from the very beginning. He's the one that Sonic's always been facing. Now apparently, according to the more recent preview for the 3rd part of this story arc, one thing that sticks out in the description, it says old memories begin to resurface. Now, what does that mean? How does that happen? Well, apparently, there's the cover of Genesis Part 3, which emulates Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on the Sega Genesis. But not entirely. You don't see Sonic standing there with a doing the 3. What you see is him running forward, and you see Tails up there, and you see Dr. Eggman in the background, and you see this pair of eyes. Now a lot of people assume that the pair of eyes is Knuckles. Others assume it's Sally. While others, like myself, could assume maybe it's Nicole. Because think about it. What role will she have to play in this whole thing? Think about that for a second. But anyway, getting back to what I'm saying. This whole thing sounds very similar, and I mentioned this in my audio video, and I asked this question on most of the forums. I mentioned that it sounds similar to DC Comics' Zero Hour and Marvel's House of M and any other kind of story that we have read similarly in comics or watched on television series and movies or theatrical movies. It's very similar. It's kind of like, it's like I mentioned before. I said this once in an audio video, and I'll say this again. It's almost like a Back to the Future kind of deal. Most importantly, Back to the Future Part 2. Remember? Let me give you an example. In Back to the Future Part 2, when Marty bought the sports almanac, but the doc threw it in the trash. What happened? You had the senior version, or the old geezer version of Griff, or Biff, or whatever you want to call him. Biff, I should say. Grabbing it, and then later on stealing the DeLorean to go back in time to 1955 and alter reality in his image. But what happened? As soon as they burned the almanac, everything went back to normal. Right? Exactly. Now I want you to keep that in mind, because some might agree that that sounds very similar. Am I right? It does, doesn't it? And in a way it sounds similar to Zero Hour and House of M. But now, getting back to what I mentioned at the beginning, the time frame. Again, I asked the question of how long does it take you to read a comic book? And like I said, on average, it probably takes someone 20 to 30 minutes to read it, because they want to read every single bit of dialogue, from the narration to what the characters are saying, to overall taking everything in from what they read and see. So if it takes you 20 to 30 minutes, let's take a look at it like this. If it takes you 20 minutes, folks, then on average, all 5 parts will take you about 2 hours to complete. If you had, in October, if you were to have all 5 parts scattered from 225, all 4 parts of Genesis, all the way here to 230, all the way to 230, folks, then what you would have is a 2-hour length movie. Now, if it takes you 30 minutes, look at it this way. The first 2 are an hour, 25 and part 1 are an hour. Part 2 and part 3 are 2 hours. Part 2 and part 3 are 2 hours, equal 2 hours. And then part 4 in the implage is 3 hours. So on average, folks, if you were to add all that together come October, and you come October when you read that whole storyline, here's the indication, folks. Here's the indication. That will take you 2 to 3 hours to complete, if you wanted to take everything in. Read all the dialogue and everything and take everything in. Now, the reason I want you to keep that in mind is because what is being showcased right now in theaters, it takes as long as 2 to 3 hours. That's right, a lot of the blockbuster films. Like recently I watched Doug Walker give a review of Pirates of the Caribbean, the new one, and he said that's 2.5 hours long, if not more so. The same could be said for Transformers, Dark of the Moon, when it comes out. Green Lantern, X-Men First Class, Captain America, even the Smurfs. Oh, I seriously doubt the Smurfs will be that long. But you get what I'm saying, folks. You get what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this event by Ian Flynn and Archie Comics is their answer to the blockbuster movies. This is their blockbuster movie of the summer. This is their summer movie. This is the big summer event, if you will. This is the blockbuster deal. Big blockbuster, big budget movie. And you know, it's not the first time Archie Comics has done this for the Sonic comic. You gotta go back to 1997 when they did it with Endgame. Yeah, they did something similar. But they didn't do a, an issue to where, well, they did. It's a countdown to Armageddon. But still, the character of the princess didn't supposedly die until the very first issue of the event. She didn't die or get shot at in the prelude issue. She got dropped to her death, to her near death, and I say near death, in the first issue of the event. So what I'm saying, folks, is it's not the first time they've done this, but they do have more issues on scale than they do anything else. Well, it's not the same more issues, but it feels like it. It's the same amount of issues, but it's more on a grander scale. I guess they're trying to present it as. So, to me, Genesis, from the prelude issue of 225 to the Implage issue of 230 and the story arc in between, is Archie Comics and Ian Flynn's answer to the summer blockbuster film. Because I can tell you this, honestly. If Ian Flynn had his way, if he could do it, if he had the capabilities to do it, and I'm not saying I know how Ian Flynn thinks. I'm not saying I know how he thinks, because I don't. But Ian Flynn, if he had the capabilities of doing it, I guarantee you, he would find a way to put this all together in a motion picture like film and put it in the theaters. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if Ian Flynn probably suggests, hey, let's do a motion comic on it. I wouldn't be surprised by that. But again, that's how big this thing is. That's how big and hyped up this event they're making is. That's how big it's supposed to be. This is how much they're hyping it up. And a lot of fans will agree with me that from what we have seen recently with Part 3's description for Genesis, that again, like I mentioned earlier, it's like 0 Hour. It's like Marvel's House of M. So it pretty much gives us an idea of what's happening, and it's like I said in one of my posts, you'll probably get that idea already if you take a look at the 5 things you got to look for in the comic. So if you want to, go to the Sega forums, go to SaturdayMSonic.com and their message board, Saturday Morning Sonic, MobiusForum.net, Sonic Stadium. Go to those sites, and I guarantee you, if you look up my post where I mentioned the 5 things to look out for, you'll probably get an idea of what exactly is going to occur. Because within the prelude issue 225, you already kind of get hints and clues as to what's going to happen. Maybe not, I'm not sure, but that's what you get. I mean, anybody may or may not agree with me. Some people may agree with me, like Red Menace 2, Tross, Miko, Estero over at SaturdayMorningSonic.com, Henry.5 at both SaturdayMSonic and SaturdayMorningSonic.com, Laser X5, Comic Reviewer, Sonic Fan Able, Sasuke. I'm sorry if I pronounced that name wrong. Sasuke here at YouTube, who did their review and posted the comic on there. Sonic Comic World. All these people will agree that what we're going to be reading in Genesis after reading Part 3's description and its preview is basically Ian Flynn's take on 0 Hour, or his adaptation or his rendition of something similar to 0 Hour, House of M, and any other kind of story, similar story that we've seen in comics, movies, and television. I know some people may find that hard to believe, but it's true. Now, all depending, though, what happens at the end is up to what Ian's already has done. Because like I said in a recent post, what will be done and what will occur will be done and have already occurred or before we get the issue. So the question is, folks, what will be done, and what will have occurred? That's the question. We don't know. Will we lose a character? Will we lose a said princess? Or what? See, these are questions everybody's asking. Did said character get protected by somebody else, or what? We don't know. But all I do know is that Genesis, from 225, the 4-part story arc, to 230, is Ian Flynn's answer, Ian Flynn and Archie Comics' answer to the Summer Blockbuster. To the Summer Blockbuster movie. That's what it is, folks. Because again, you take a look at the time frames of 20 to 30 minutes to read a comic and take everything in, there's your answer. But, you know, tell me what you guys think. Do you agree with me or not with what I said here? Or do you think I just rambled? But tell me what you think. Comment down below, and I'll talk to you all later.